The math of the Pleistocene era was simple. If you cannot produce, you are eliminated. Out here, nature runs a ruthless economy, and anyone failing to pull their weight is reduced to a zero balance, which makes this particular Neanderthal story incredibly strange. Call him Gorm. He lived near a cave in the mountains of what is now Iraqi Kurdistan, and he had exactly one mandatory job to keep his tribe alive: hunting apex predators. Big animals, fast animals, animals with heavy hooves and strong opinions. To do that job, you need a flawless physical resume. Gorm's file, however, is a disaster. A severe blow to the face blinded his left eye. His right arm was fractured and amputated below the elbow. His right leg suffered debilitating damage. Inside his skull, external auditory exostoses, bony growths, sealed his ear canals shut. Gorm was completely, profoundly deaf. He had 0% hunting capability. You cannot see the mammoth on your left. You cannot hear the cave lion behind you, and you have no right arm to throw a spear. By the harsh survival math of his environment, he's a rounding error waiting to be erased. Yet his bones show he lived to his 40s, the Ice Age equivalent of collecting a pension. By every brutal rule of the Stone Age, Gorm should have been Winter's problem. Instead, he was carried all the way to old age by a tribe that could have simply, quietly walked away. Keeping a blind, deaf man breathing in a landscape designed to eat him requires intense daily labor. Someone has to be his ears. Someone is assigned the unofficial full-time job of noticing a shift in the grass, grabbing his elbow, and physically steering him away from a ledge he cannot see. Then there is the food. Every single night, someone quietly does the math that leaves Gorm a share of precious, hard-won calories. The tribe intentionally gave up meat they desperately needed, handing it over to a man who contributed nothing to the hunt. And you have to do this with patience. Try steering a proud, grown man who cannot hear your voice or see your hand every single day for over a decade. This is unpaid, unglamorous, teeth-gritting physical labor, maintained by people whose own survival was already hanging by a thread. If Gorm were a lone act of kindness, you could shrug him off. But archaeologists have started looking for a pattern, asking if this was a statistical fluke or the most obvious tenant in a much bigger building. In 1908, excavators working in a rock shelter in France uncovered another file. Everyone calls him the Old Man. He lived to around 40 years old, despite severe arthritis that bent and roughened his spine, and a jaw where the tooth sockets had actually healed completely smooth. He didn't just need a dentist, he had no teeth at all. To keep this grandfather alive in the Ice Age, someone spent hours processing his dinner, mashing roots into paste, pounding meat until it was soft enough for him to swallow, and possibly even chewing it for him first so he wouldn't starve.
A lion pride does not carry its blind hunter. A wolf pack does not mash food for its toothless elder. Nature has one default law: the strong move on, and the weak fall behind. These hominids looked at that law and, without a single written word between them, decided they were going to break it. Archaeologist Penny Spikins and her colleagues took a wider look. They went through the skeletal records of over 30 Neanderthal individuals carrying the marks of catastrophic, life-threatening injuries. This chart visualizes the survival outcomes from that data, showing that over 80% of these Neanderthals with fatal-level traumas, smashed ribs, crushed feet, deep wounds, actually survived and healed. A broken leg only knits if you live long enough for it to knit. You only survive that long if, while you are flat on your back and useless for weeks, someone else is hauling your water, guarding your body, and bringing you dinner you did not earn. Looking closely at these heavy fractures and heel traumas, we see a group that repeatedly looked at a massive loss of resources on their ledger and actively chose to absorb that loss again and again. There is even evidence that they actively cleaned wounds, applied natural substances to fight infection and dull pain, and had midwives assisting in childbirth. They were operating a functional healthcare plan 40,000 years before anyone thought to invent a clipboard. This volume of evidence suggests that medical care was a strategic habit rather than a series of lucky accidents. It points to an unwritten rule baked into the group. You catch people when they fall, you patch them, and you put them back in the rotation the moment they can stand.
This flowchart illustrates traditional human evolution. We grew big brains, invented tools, and only then afforded kindness. But Spickens argues this ladder is upside down. Tenderness came first. Our ancestors nursed their broken long before forging complex tools or finishing those big brains. Gorm provided a living rehearsal for a different kind of survival. Every day his tribe chose to keep him was a day they practiced the trust and coordination that would eventually build a civilization. Every time someone covers your blind side when you can't, you are relying on an instinct that is older than farming, older than writing, and older than words themselves. It was forged in the dark, in the cold, by people who refused to let go. So who covered your blind side? Who is the person that wouldn't let you fall when the ledger said they could? Drop their name down in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't wander off into the dark on your own. We are the descendants of an impossible, uneconomical decision made in the hills above Shanidar. We survived because 40,000 years ago, a band of so-called brutes looked at the numbers on a broken man, decided they did not matter, and kept him anyway.